Hello friends, I am Dr. Poonam Kela, working as assistant professor at Modern College of Pharmacy, Nigdi. Today I am going to conduct a lecture on diabetes mellitus. So what is DM? DM is defined as heterogeneous metabolic disorder characterized by common features of chronic hyperglycemia with disturbance of carbohydrate, fat and protein metabolism. Basically it is divided into two types, type 1 and type 2 DM. So let's see type 1. So first I will summarize all types of DM. In that we will see first type 1 DM constitute about 10% causes of DM, previously termed as juvenile onset diabetes, as it is occur in younger age. It is called insulin dependent DM because it requires insulin. In new classification, neither age nor insulin dependence are considered as absolute criteria. It is subdivided into two types, that is 1A and 1B. In 1A, it is called as immune mediated, which is characterized by autoimmune destructions of beta cells, which usually leads to insulin deficiency. And 1B is idiopathic, characterized by insulin deficiency with tendency to develop ketosis, but these patients are negative for autoimmune marks. Then type 2 DM comprises about 80% causes of DM, previously called maturity onset diabetes, also called as non-insulin dependent DM of obese and non-obese type, predominantly affect older people. Then another type is specific etiological type of DM. 10% of DM have known specific etiological defect, genetic defect of beta cell function, genetic defect in insulin action, disease of exocrine pancreas, infection, genetic syndrome. And the last is gestational DM. It is occur in pregnant lady. 4% of pregnant women develop DM due to metabolic changes during pregnancy. So normal insulin metabolism, in that we will first see the synthesis. The major stimulation for both synthesis and release of insulin is glucose. Insulin is synthesized in beta cells of pancreas. Initially, it is formed as pre-proinsulin, which is then converted into proinsulin in presence of proteolytic enzyme. The proinsulin have two chains, A chain and B chain. These two chains combine with C peptide and form insulin. For therapeutic purpose, human insulin is now produced by recombinant DNA technology. Now we will see the release. Glucose is a key regulator of insulin secretion from beta cells. First is hypoglycemia stimulates transport into beta cells of glucose transporter, that is GLUT2. Then isolate transcription factor causes glucose phosphorylation, which is act as control release of glucose regulated insulin secretion. Then third one is metabolism of glucose in presence of glycolysis form the glucose 6 phosphate which generate ATP. The generated ATP alters ion channel activity of membrane, which causes ATP sensitive potassium channel inhibition, leads to open calcium channel, result in influx of calcium. This calcium stimulate insulin release. Now we will see the action. The insulin is act by two way. First is degrade in the liver and then enter in systemic circulation for the action on target cell. First is insulin bind to the receptor on the target cell. The insulin receptor has intrinsic tyrosine kinase activity which activates insulin receptor substrate IRS1 and 2 protein, which initiate sequence of phosphorylation and dephosphorylation reaction, which is responsible for glucose transport, glycogen synthesis, protein synthesis and lipogenesis. So we will see in the diagram. Here you can see that pre-proinsulin is converted into proinsulin. Then proinsulin with then form the insulin by A-B chain with the C-peptide bond. So whenever there is a condition of hypoglycemia, means the blood glucose level goes below 70 mg per dl, then GLUT2 activates. This GLUT2 in presence of glucokinase produce glucose 6-phosphate which stimulate ATP. The ATP generation alters ion channel activity which leads to influx of calcium and outflux of potassium. This influx of calcium releases the insulin. This insulin act on insulin receptor of IRS1 and 2 proteins which causes anabolic action and mitogenic action. In anabolic action, it causes protein synthesis, glycogen synthesis, lipogenesis and glucose transport. So next we will see the pathogenesis of type 1 DM. Pathogenesis of type 1 ADM is explained on the basis of three mutual interlinked mechanisms. In first, genetic susceptibility, autoimmune factor, environmental factor. Genetic susceptibility, it is observed in identical twins. Then identical twins have 50% chances to develop this disease. Susceptible gene on HLA region in chromosome 6. Then environmental factors, certain viral infection that is mumps, measles, experimental induction, alloxan, streptozotocin and pentamidine, geographical and seasonal variation, bovine milk protein. Then autoimmune factor is isolate cell antibodies, insulites, selective destruction of beta cells, association of type 1A DM with other autoimmune diseases such as Graves' disease, Addison's disease, Hashimoto disease and pernicious anemia. Interlinked pathogenesis of all three factors is that at the time of birth, if individual with genetic susceptibility, that is normal beta cells, but if it is comes in environmental factor will affect the immunity of individual, then destructions of beta cells get started. As the destruction comes to 80%, the signs and symptoms will show. On pathological basis of common signs and symptoms due to uncontrolled hyperglycemia in DM. In insulin deficiency, first the hyperglycemia is occur which shows fatigue as our cell require ATP to survive, but due to insulin deficiency the glucose does not incorporate into our cell, that's why cell feel fatigue. Then hyperglycemia causes glycosuria which gives good medium for the survival of bacteria, so which is ultimately leads to vulvitis. Then glycosuria causes increased catabolism or decreased anabolism. If increased catabolism is occur, then it shows hunger, polyphagia and weight loss. Increased catabolism also increases lipolysis in adipose tissue which shows wasting. Then increased fatty acids and oxidation is occur which leads to ketoacidosis. On other hand, decreased anabolism leads to osmotic diuresis, that is polyuria and polydipsia. Osmotic diuresis causes dehydration and loss of electrolytes which shows tachycardia and hypotension. Dehydration leads to diabetic coma. So both ketoacidosis and diabetic coma ultimately leads to the death of patient. So next is intracellular accumulation of sorbitol and fructose result in entry of water inside the cell which leads to cellular swelling and cell damage. Other is deficiency of myoinositol which promotes injury to Schwann cell and retinal pericyte. That's why retinopathy is observed in DM. Excessive oxygen free radical. In hyperglycemia there is increased production of reactive oxygen free radicals due to mitochondrial oxidation phosphorylation which may damage various target cell in diabetes. Next we will see the complication of diabetes. There are two types of complication, acute metabolic complication and late systemic complication. In acute metabolic complication, it is diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA, hyperosmolar, hyperglycemic, non-ketotic coma and hypoglycemia. In late systemic complication, It is atherosclerosis, diabetic microangiopathy, diabetic nephropathy, diabetic neuropathy, diabetic retinopathy, and infection. So we will see one by one. In diabetic ketoacidosis, insulin deficiency causes lipolysis of adipose tissue, which leads to release of free fatty acid into plasma. Oxidation by acetyl-CoA in liver leads to formation of ketone bodies. The urinary excretion of ketone bodies is prevented due to dehydration and causes systemic metabolic ketoacidosis. The signs and symptoms of ketoacidosis is anorexia, nausea, vomiting, deep and fast breathing, mental confusion, and coma. The next is hyperosmolar hyperglycemic non-ketotic coma, that is HHS. Severe dehydration result from hyperglycemic diuresis, leads to blood sugar is extremely high, plasma osmolarity is high, which leads to high viscosity of blood, and ultimately thrombosis and bleeding complication get occur. The next is hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemic episode may develop in patient of type 1 DM. It may result from excessive administration of insulin, missing a meal, or due to stress. Hypoglycemia episodes are harmful as they reduce permanent brain damage. Rebound hyperglycemia, so called Somogy's effect. Next is atherosclerosis. DM of both type 1 and type 2 accelerates the development of atherosclerosis. The causes for this accelerated atherosclerosis process is not known, but possible contributory factors are hyperlipidemia, reduced HDL level, non-enzymatic glycosylation, increased platelet adhesiveness, obesity, associated hypertension in diabetes. The next one is diabetic microangiopathy. Microangiopathy of diabetes is characterized by basement membrane thickening of small blood vessels and capillaries of different organ and tissue such as skin, skeletal muscle, eye, and kidney. Similar type of basement membrane like material is also deposited in non-vascular tissue such as peripheral nerve, renal tubule, and Bowman's capsule. Diabetic nephropathy. 4 types of diabetic nephropathy is seen. In that, first is diabetic glomerulosclerosis, vascular lesion, diabetic pyelonephritis and necrotizing renal papillitis, tubular lesions, that is Epstein lesions. Next is diabetic neuropathy. Diabetic neuropathy may affect all parts of the nervous system such as symmetric peripheral neuropathy is most characteristic features of this. Then next is diabetic retinopathy. Diabetic retinopathy is a leading cause of blindness. There are 2 types of lesions involving retinal vessels, background and proliferatives. Diabetes also predisposes the patient to early development of cataract and glaucoma. Then next is infection. Diabetics have enhanced susceptibility of various infections such as tuberculosis, pneumonias, pyelonephritis, otitis, carbuncles, and diabetic ulcers. This could be due to various factors such as impaired leukocyte function, reduced cellular immunity, poor blood supply due to vascular involvement, and hyperglycemia. Here I have shown some pictures which shows tuberculosis, pneumonia, diabetic foot ulcer, that carbuncles. Now we will move toward the diagnosis. So the main cheap and convenient test for the diagnosis of DM is urine test. Urine test may be false positive or false negative. Urine is tested for presence of glucose and ketones. Glucosuria is mainly performed due to with the help of Benedict qualitative test. More sensitive and glucose specific test is dipstick method. Renal glucosuria after diabetes, the next most common cause of glucosuria is the reduced renal threshold for glucose. The next is elementary glucosuria, a rapid and transitory rise in blood glucose level above the normal renal threshold may occur in some individuals after a meal. This type of response to meal is called lag storage curve, or more appropriately elementary glucoseuria. Then ketonuria, tests for ketone bodies in the urine are required for assessing the severity of diabetes and not for diagnosis of diabetes. However, if both glucoseuria and ketonuria are present, diagnosis of diabetes is almost certain. Rothera's test and strip test are the conveniently performed for detection of ketonuria. The next is single blood sugar estimation. Foligno method for measurement of all reducing substance in the blood, including glucose. A grossly elevated single determination of plasma glucose may be sufficient to make the diagnosis of diabetes. A fasting plasma glucose value above 126 mg per dl is certainly indicative of diabetes. Then third one is screening by fasting glucose test. In that, fasting plasma glucose determination is a screening test for DM2. It is recommended that all individuals above 45 years of age must undergo screening fasting glucose test every 3 years. Many of the cases meeting the current criteria of DM are asymptomatic and do not know that they have the disorder. Studies have shown that type 2 DM may be present for about 10 years before symptomatic disease appear. About half the cases of type 2 DM have some diabetic related complications at the time of diagnosis. The course of disease is favorable alter with treatment. Now we will move toward the management of DM. The major component of the treatment of DM is depend on diet and exercise, and another one is insulin therapy. So diet is a basic part of management in every case. Treatment cannot be effective unless adequate attention is given to the ensuring appropriate nutrition. Dietary treatment should aim at ensuring weight control, providing nutritional requirement, allowing good glycemic control with blood glucose level as close to normal as possible, correcting any associated blood lipid abnormalities. The next is exercise. Physical activity promotes weight reduction and improve insulin sensitivity, thus lowering blood glucose level. Together with dietary treatment, a program of regular physical activities and exercise should be considered for each person. Such as a program must be tailored to individuals' health status and fitness. People should, however, be educated about the potential risk of hypoglycemia and how to avoid it. The next is insulin therapy. It is divided into two types, short-term use and long-term use. The short-term use is indicated in acute illness, surgery, stress and emergency, in pregnancy, breastfeeding, as insulin is very safe in pregnancy and breastfeeding. Insulin may be used as initial therapy in type 2 diabetes, in marked hyperglycemia, severe metabolic decompensation. These are some conditions where the severe metabolic decompensation is occur, such as lactic acidosis, diabetic ketoacidosis, etc. Then long-term use, if target have not been reached after optimal dose of combination therapy, then consider change of multiple dose of insulin therapy is required. Now we will see insulin regimen. The majority of patients will require more than one daily injection if good glycemic control is to be achieved. However, a once daily injection of an intermediate acting preparation may be effective used in some patients. Twice daily mixtures of short and intermediate acting insulin is commonly used regimen. In some cases, a mixture of short and intermediate acting insulin may be given in the morning. Further doses of short acting insulin are given before lunch and the evening meal, and an evening dose of intermediate acting insulin is given at bedtime. Other regimen based on the same principle may be used. A regimen of multiple injection of short acting insulin before the main meals with an appropriate dose of an intermediate acting insulin given at bedtime may be used, particularly when strict glycemic control is mandatory. The overview of insulin and its action. I have given some onset of action, peak and duration of action of some insulin. In that, soluble human insulin rapid acting insulin, intermediate human isophene insulin, long acting basal analogs, pre-mixed human soluble insulin, and pre-mixed analogs of isophene. So you have to remember the onset, peak and duration of various insulin. Try to mug up all these things. Then I have shown some brand names and dosing schedule of various insulin with their onset, peak and duration. Again you have to mug up all these things. The important thing in this chart is dosing schedule. It is very important while giving insulin. These are references. Thank you so much for patient listening.